But we grew by over 100 people this year. And
Mhm.
the thing that I love is for the first time ever, when I walked around the room, because I go to every table and speak to every table during dinner, and then I take my food home because I don't get to eat.
Yeah, you're busy. Yeah,
And,
yeah.
but as I go to the tables, the exciting thing was 3/4 of the people at this last gala I didn't know.
That's awesome.
And it
That's actually a
wasn't that
great thing.
people quit coming, but
Yeah.
it's that more have come
Yes.
and we're growing bigger. And
That means
so
it's working. It's working.
Yes.
And we've had the good fortune of working with you all. And so I'm just tickled to have you on. Susan Norris, the
Yeah.
founder of Rescuing Hope. Susan, please tell us about Rescuing Hope and the work that you all do and a little bit about yourself, if you don't mind. And we'll
Sure.
get going. Yeah.
So my background is education. I have a master's in education and taught public school until I became a mom. Then I stepped into doing some private teaching as the kind of the go-to sub, because when you're a teacher, the biggest nightmare is that you're out of your classroom and who knows what's going to happen.
Right.
But they loved me because as a teacher, I stepped in, read the objectives of the day, and just kept moving the curriculum forward. So I did that to be where my kids were. So that's, I now have 2 adult children. One is married, one is not. So we're empty nesters and we love it
That's
because we
awesome.
get to go and travel. And I will tell you a funny HGA story as we get into that. But
Oh, cool.
Rescuing Hope's mission statement is to enlighten the public of sex trafficking in America, educate potential victims and first responders, and empower advocates and survivors. And I really started this work as a concerned mom.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just started digging in. I joke and tell people I'm female, I'm a mother, I'm a former educator, and I'm a parent. So that gives me license to be nosier than the FBI.
I'm going to say you're well qualified to do all these
And
things.
so I dove into it. And then I thought, okay, I have to protect these kids.
Yeah.
What can I do? A movie would be great, but I didn't have a spare $25 million.
Totally.
And so then it was like, well, okay, they'll read a book, but they will only read a book if, in fact, it is not a nonfiction book. Because the only books that kids read are the ones that they can have assigned to them as a course. And
Right.
then otherwise, it's going to be a fiction book.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted them to read it. So I knew it needed to be fiction. It also needed to be fiction because all of the young ladies I sat with, their traffickers were still out there.
Mm-hmm.
So if I told one girl's story, it would put her at great risk of retaliation.
Mm-hmm.
So I took bits and pieces of each young lady's story and family members whose daughters were missing, law enforcement, therapist, all of this. And I created a fictional character named Hope. That everything that happened to Hope in the book happened to someone or the family member of someone I sat with. And I wrote it and honestly thought that was going to be all that I would do in this movement. And then I would go on and figure out what it was going to be when I grew up. And the victims started calling me, hey, mama, I need groceries. Hey, mama, I need diapers for my baby. Hey, mama, I'm in jail. Can you put money on my books? And I had no idea what they were talking about. So I truly cut my teeth and got my education in the fire working with survivors as a mom.
Yeah.
I literally stepped in almost as that mom and big sister role. And I funded the work for 6 years with our family bank account and would call my husband and go, I got to fly girl to recovery. I'm going to try and get someone to give us some miles, but I'm doing this no matter what. So he was a huge supporter.
Yeah.
And then in 2015, it was basically, we need help. I can't do all of this stuff alone. So I needed someone to help me do it. And then we also needed funding. So ironically, when we started the nonprofit, it started at my kitchen table.
In 2015. So just to recount, you published the book in 2010. You start Rescuing Hope.
I started researching in 2010. It didn't go to press and release until 2012. And then
2012. Pardon me, I got that mixed up. Yep.
Yeah. Then 2015, we started the nonprofit.
At your kitchen table.
At my kitchen table
Awesome.
with me and 3 college kids who wanted an internship so I could make them work for free.
Smart.
And then your beloved Lisa Sampson, our gala event coordinator, called and she goes, I want to help and you keep sending me to other organizations, but I want to help you.
Yeah.
And she said, I'll come stuff envelopes or whatever you have for me. So she joined us, and I gave her the nickname Bougie because Lisa likes nice things. Um,
She's such a
and
sweetheart. That's so funny.
she is amazing.
Yeah.
And we had people say, you can't do a gala. You
Mm,
don't have enough lead time. You don't have enough funding. You don't have enough all this. And we walked out of that meeting with people who'd done these really successful galas. And Lisa
yeah.
goes, I don't know if we can do this. And I said,
Yeah.
Lisa, they're not factoring in the good Lord above has called us to this work, and they're not factoring in that you know how to have a good time and you know how to plan a party. And
That's
I'm
right.
putting all my money and all my support on you.
God
And
bless.
the first one, we didn't even know organizations like yours existed.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
seriously went out on a limb and we were begging and borrowing anybody that had a vacation home. Will you please give us a week? Will you please give us a week?
Yeah.
And ironically, we were told by everyone, oh, you'll go in the hole the first gala or two. So you just need to know that. And the first one we had,
Hmm.
we profited
Yeah.
$40,000.
Lisa told me that. That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then I was like, okay, what are we going to do now? She goes, I need to learn what I'm supposed to be doing. And so we started at the Raise conference
Hmm.
that One
Hmm.
Cause does. And
Yeah.
that's how we met
2019.
you guys.
Yeah.
And the rest is history.
That's awesome. It's so cool. Yeah. I want to get into your team and talk about that and how you've amassed this team. And it sounded like you said, to Lisa, like, we're doing God's work. We have to do this.
We and on purpose are not a faith-based
I understand.
organization
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
we need to get into some areas
Yeah.
that would prohibit us from being in.
I understand
But I
completely.
always
Yeah.
like to say we're a team of faith-based people working in a non-faith-based organization.
Yeah.
Um, because I don't ever want a survivor or a victim to feel like they can't reach out to us and say, well, I'm not a Christian, so I
Yeah.
can't
Because
give
there's
their.
some filter.
I
Yeah.
mean, we
Exactly.
have worked with people from LGBTQ community. We have worked with people who are Buddhists. We've worked with people who are atheists. We've had people on our staff that come from a variety of different backgrounds.
Yeah.
This issue is not a respecter of
It's
persons. There's not a checklist. Oh, are you a Christian or are
it's
you
bigger than that.
Caucasian?
It's bigger
It
than that.
reaches every demographic out there.
Yeah.
So when I established this, I knew we had to be willing to reach every demographic out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When you started, I don't know why my mind goes here. I had the good fortune, Susan, of interviewing a lady named Celeste Mergens, and she started Girls for Days and wrote a book similar story. She goes to
Mhm,
Africa. She finds out there's feminine hygiene insecurity, to say the very least. Okay.
mhm,
And my mind takes me back there, and I'm listening to her. I'm going, well, obviously people want to help.
mhm,
And she said, well, they do now, and we're 15 years in. And it was because it was a very taboo subject. Now, I'm not typecasting your mission and the work that you do. That is absolutely
mhm,
imperative. So, my question, when you got going, you start approaching people for funding, and I'm not presupposing that it was difficult, but is this a difficult conversation to have with folks to open their eyes to what's really happening in their town? You mentioned this
mhm.
happens in Atlanta. This is where you started.
It's
It
everywhere.
happens everywhere. And so I'm just curious, just to like if you faced any, challenges doing that, because I know that there could be a startup nonprofit that could be in the anti-trafficking space listening to this, and just like, that has to rip the band-aid off, so to speak, to have this conversation and to educate and enlighten folks about what's really happening. Like,
Sure.
talk to us about that journey and where it started and where it is now.
Yeah. So I'm not from Georgia. I'm from North Carolina, but I'm a
Okay.
bulldog personality
I
in
get you.
that
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the girls have deemed me, my nickname by them is Mama Bear. And they're little children that have come into this world. That's their grandma name for me is Mama Bear.
Yeah.
And when I asked them, they said it's because when it's for us or about us, you come out like a mama bear whose cub is at risk.
Mhm.
And that's always been my personality. And I also have another friend of mine said, Susan Norris is big. And I looked at her and I went, that's an insult. She goes, I don't mean your physical size. I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
mean your mouth, even though my brothers both told me I had a big mouth growing up. She said, whatever you do, you live by that motto of go big or go home.
Mhm.
Why are we doing this? If we're not going to do it to have a massive impact, then why are we doing it? So
Mhm.
difficult conversations never bother me. I
Yeah.
have zero filter, and I tell people when I meet them up front, I may offend you, and I'm probably not going to be sorry if it's about this movement because it's too important. But with regard to fundraising, when we started, because it started out, Susan Norris was Rescuing Hope, and Rescuing Hope was Susan Norris. So I
Yeah.
felt like if I was asking for money, I
Mhm.
was asking it for me personally,
Mhm.
which is laughable because I didn't pay myself for well over a decade.
Mhm.
And the only reason that I even drew money at all was because the board said, we have to pay you something, or big corporate companies will not feel like it's a legitimate organization if the founder and executive director is not getting paid.
Mhm.
So I said, well, pay me as little as you can, because I wanted to work where our staff got to the point that they were paid full time for what they were doing. Our staff started off as a volunteer staff, and in just about every position, they were just passionate about it. And one of the things I think I've always been blessed to be able to do is, as one of my friends used to say, Susan, if God calls you to something, you think he's called all of us to go with you, and you have to bring us with you. And I'm like, well, yeah, because if it's a
Yeah.
God thing, of course it's for
It's
everybody.
for all of us.
Um,
Yeah.
but I am a social learner, so I don't like doing things by myself. My husband's an introvert, and if 20 people is a crowd for him, 2,000's even better for me. I
Yeah.
love
You
people. I
like
love
people.
all
Yeah.
different kinds of people. They don't have to be like me for me to
Yeah.
like them. They don't have
Yeah.
to believe like me.
Mhm.
But I look for, when I meet people now, because after we, started the nonprofit and other people were getting paid, then I was asking for an organization. And it felt easier for me to ask because I was not asking for me, Susan Norris, but I was asking so I could pay the staff. I was asking so I could buy the things that survivors needed.
Mhm.
So then I was able, if someone goes, well, why do you need this money? It had nothing to do with me, and it had everything to do with the work we were asking them to support. And so I always ask people, are you familiar with this issue? I want to know where they're starting from, because I don't want to waste my time giving them information they already know about.
Mhm.
But I want to draw the connection between the issue that we fight and how it impacts them.
Mhm.
People don't give a flip about any cause if it doesn't directly impact them.
Mhm.
The ones who are the one-time donors are the people that want to put their fingers in their ears or their head in the sand, and they're like, yeah, I'll give you some money so you'll go away.
Yeah.
Um, the people who see this attachment, whether they're people of faith or not, to them and how it impacts them, they're more likely to give more than once.
Yeah.
People that see that this affects their bottom line, well, they want to fix this problem because they don't want to lose money over and over. So
Yeah.
when it's an individual, there's almost always a 6 degrees of separation, and they know someone who's been trafficked, or they've heard of someone who was almost trafficked, or they watch the movie Taken, so they think they're an expert.
Sure.
And so they're easier to talk to and get them plugged in. I never ask for money. I just
Yeah.
don't. I
Yeah.
say, we need your partnership. A lot of organizations go after donor cultivation. Um, that is asking for money, and that will never stick. I look for partnership cultivation because I don't want just your check, because your check allows you to forget about our movement and what we're fighting. It allows you to desensitize and kind of wash your hands of the ick of trafficking. I want your partnership. I want your time.
Yeah.
I definitely want your money. I have no problems saying that.
Yeah.
But a partnership goes both ways.
100%.
Um, all partnerships and relationships that fail are one sided.
Yeah.
And so I don't ever start a conversation based on what you can do for me and to help me. I look at, how can we help you? When I go talk with a company, I walk in the door, I've done my homework. I know what they do. I know the type of person they're employing. I know any way there could be overlap. And because of the work we've done in Georgia, I can talk about their potential to be sued.
Sure.
if they're not doing this, because we now have laws in Georgia that if you do any portion of aiding or abetting to trafficking, you can be charged as a trafficker, whether you're purchasing, selling. If you
Mhm.
work the front desk in a hotel and you know it's going on and you don't do anything to stop it,
You're
your
aiding,
hotel can be sued. And we've had that happen. We've actually had survivors here
right?
successfully sue hotel chains
Because they knew what was
because they
happening.
were complicit in their aiding and abetting of
Yeah.
trafficking, whether they
Yeah.
told the trafficker that law enforcement was there or they took zero steps. And
Yeah.
probably the best example of this is I was speaking at a large event
Mhm.
with our director of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation at the time.
Mhm.
This was, we've had a couple guys take that role since, but this was Vic Reynolds, and he was a great personal friend. He's now
Mhm.
a Superior Court judge.
Oh, wow.
And this movement, he was all in the thick of it with us.
Good.
He was not removed. He
Mhm.
was a phone call away, and I loved him dearly. And so he was actually the keynote at something I was attending. Well, because we worked so well together, Vic turned a keynote into that he and I were presenting. Even as I
Yeah.
sat at the table and I never left my seat, he would say, Susan with Rescue and Hope, and he would ask, and then he would throw a question to me. So it was laughable. The coordinator said, I should have just had two chairs. I don't know what I
Yeah.
was thinking.
Yeah.
But he asked me to share just how prevalent it is everywhere that it's. And I said, well, we were having our gala at the Omni at the Battery when it was under construction. We signed the contract
Mhm.
and we prayed that they would finish construction in time because that's where our gala was going to be.
Mhm.
And so we had the gala and we make sure that we get gowns for the girls and we get their hair and makeup done and they get to come, but we tell them we're not putting you as a group because that would be like Captain Obvious. And
Yeah.
we want them to just see the number of people that are helping with this movement. We
Yeah,
never
they
have
love
them
it.
speak because that's exploiting their past.
Mhm.
Um, they give themselves away. Like at that particular gala, my husband started boating on a beach house, and one of them screamed out, "Mama, make sure Mr. Mark gets that so we can all
Yeah.
go with you." And I'm like, "Well, okay, so
Yeah.
your anonymity is
Loan
just brought
covered.
out."
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
But we were cleaning up. They always stay after. They always help us pack everything up because they're so excited of what we've been able to do.
Yeah.
And they came running up. They go, "Mama, we got trafficking's happening here in this hotel." I'm like, "What?" They said, "Yeah, we were in the elevator and we saw this dude. He was with a girl and we were able, and it's happening. There's hoeing going on here." And I'm like, "Oh, go to the head of security and report what you've seen." And they did. And I stopped as I was discussing that this thing. I said, "So I say that to you because that was a really nice hotel. It was brand new.
Mhm.
They knew while we were there and they were encouraging us to do it, yet trafficking happened there." So after that event, this guy comes up. He goes, "I'm going to need you to stop telling that story." And he
Mm.
hands me his business card. And I look down and he's the head of security for the Omni.
Wow.
And I looked
Yeah.
at him and I said, "No, I'm
Sorry,
not going to
pal.
stop telling that."
Yeah.
I said, "But if you want to work with me, we can change the ending and it can be very positive for you." And
I
he
love
said, "What
that.
do you mean?" I said, "Well, let's get you taking steps that are appropriate to show that you're trying to fight this." I said, "You will never make sure that your hotel is 100% just free of all
Mhm.
trafficking because
Mhm.
traffickers are smarter than most of us
Sure, sure.
and they're savvy." And I said, "But if you get subpoenaed and someone's saying I was trafficked at the Omni, I can give you a list of things that you can do that demonstrate we're aware this could be happening and we've
Mhm.
taken these 12 steps to prevent it."
Yeah.
I said, "Then you won't be liable for
Mhm.
it." And
Mhm.
so we had a meeting after that and we customized a training for
Mhm.
them. And now he requires all new hire to go through our training within a calendar year or they're immediately terminated. So we changed the narrative into a
Yes.
positive.
Through
And so
education. Yeah, it sounds like.
that's what we do. We go in 4 times a year. We do the training in English and in Spanish.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and we answer any questions. And then we have other protocols that we don't make public that we
Mhm.
do with hotels.
Right.
So he changed the story to where now I talk about the Omni everywhere I go. So they're
Yeah.
getting all this free
Oh,
publicity,
okay, good. Yeah,
and
yeah.
they're also the shining star of these are the things you can do to make a difference.
Mhm,
And so I tell people, hotels are the obvious, but there are
mhm,
so many other things like in businesses. One of the researchers did a study in Atlanta before he was going to speak just for kicks.
mhm,
He threw out some false ads
mhm.
with a burner phone number to call and book an ad with a young lady. And then he collected the data and presented it. And you know what time most of the quote unquote dates are booked? At 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Now they're not executed then, but they're booked then. Okay, so what are most people doing at 2 o'clock in the afternoon?
I would think they'd be working.
Yes, so they're at work. They're using either a work phone or a
Oh,
work computer or work hours. So we can go to any industry and say, let's establish a zero tolerance policy and we'll help you figure
absolutely.
out what this is. And
Yeah,
if you put on the other end of that, if it's discovered, you're terminated immediately, no questions asked. Well, then you're taking steps to fight it. So when I go to a company, I ask them, tell me a little bit about what you do. Okay, now this is how we can help you. We also offer to come in and do trainings for their employees as parents about
mhm,
technology and safety for your kids. So we walk in the door and say, hey, we want to partner with you. And
mm,
here's the value we're bringing to your company.
yeah,
And this is what we want to offer to you.
yeah,
We never ask because once we come in and provide what we're offering, then they know they can't just take from us as a
yeah.
nonprofit and not turn around and give in return.
I
And
love
I will
that.
tell you, some of the companies that we partner with now, the head of them, their point person that we deal with, have become some of my best friends.
It's
And
awesome.
we go have lunch to talk about work things, but we're also talking about your families. And
Mhm,
if something's going on with your family and you tell me, then our team is there to support you in it. And I
mhm,
think that's probably the biggest thing that we do at Rescue and Hope that's important to me, whether it's a corporate partner, an individual partner, or if it is a staff member. We view you as family.
mhm.
We don't view you as a donor or as a company that we have to please. And it goes back to elementary school because
Yeah,
we played Red Rover. And to me, in this movement, there's the winning side that's trying to help solve the problem. And then there's the losing side that's trying to perpetuate the problem.
mhm,
So whether you're a company, a survivor, a volunteer, our job is to grow our team. And we see our team as one big family fighting the same bad guy.
mhm.
So we're going to come in. We've had companies that have been nice financial sponsors for our gala and even for other things that we do that have awarded us large grants whose daughter or son have gone through some horrible medical something or a family member was killed as a result of the latest hurricane that came through.
Yeah,
And we are boots on the ground going to show up with you
yeah,
because we care about you. You're
yeah,
not just a donor check that we can go, hey, we got this big check. No, we want to know about your family. We want to know about your lives. And because that's how we get people plugged in and that's how we bring value, we don't see them as a project or as a work thing.
yeah.
They become family and friends to us.
I love that you've reframed the moniker of donor to partner. I think that you said something beautiful where relationships that don't last are often one-sided. And we preach as our first and biggest rule of fundraising, relationships first. Relationships are your superpower. You've mentioned another thing. It's like one thing to get someone to give once and then plug their ears. The most
Mhm.
important partner, as you'd like to put it, we say investor,
Mhm.
supporter. The most important one are the ones that give multiple times, right? As well, and that are in for the long haul. I love that you frame that. And we also say, you said it, we want to partner with you. We've always said, let's remove the word ask from our lexicon and replace it with invite or
Mhm.
partner,
Thank you.
collaborate. I don't think you stumbled onto anything, but I think that the way that you frame it, Susan, it's just so palpable and impactful for folks that are listening. I also believe in doing things differently. I view differentiation as stronger than competition, especially if you're a nonprofit, I'm not presupposing you feel this way because I don't think you do at all.
Mhm.
But a lot of nonprofits think that we're competing for dollars and this and that. And I was like, well, there's one way to go about it is not to ignore it. First off, there's a tremendous amount of money in the system, but two, be different. And being different
Right.
means that you can, build a relationship and show that person that you're there for them, right? As opposed to just asking for money all the time, and sending them an
We've
envelope,
got we've got a corporate partner that is in the healthcare industry.
Hmm.
And so they wanted to do a conference. We're actually doing it this Thursday.
Oh, cool. Nice.
And I said, okay, that's great. Can we co sponsor it with you?
Yeah.
And I will be the boots on the ground here. And because they're not based here.
Okay.
And even though they have people here. And so we dual branded everything that
Nice.
went out.
That's
And
awesome.
then I looked at what they thought about the agenda and I said, this is great, but you can't come into Atlanta and do a human trafficking conference
Hmm.
and not highlight the great work all of these organizations are doing.
Lovely.
So we built a panel of experts from people in Atlanta and surrounding areas that get to highlight what they're doing. We have one staff member who's on that panel. I will moderate. And because I partner with all of these people in the work we do, I can highlight and give them shout outs for the great things that they're doing. Then
Smart.
we have 18 vendor tables. All of those vendor tables are other nonprofits in this footprint. And the coordinator was not going to involve them other than letting them have a vendor table. I said, no,
Yeah.
they need to say who they are and what they're doing in the movement and
Yeah.
how they connect to your organization or ours.
Yeah.
And so now we have another 18 people. They're getting to do their elevator speech
Totally.
basically because that's a lot of people. And they're like, 18 people, that's too many on a panel. I said, bring them up half and half
Yeah.
and let's, who are you? What do you do? And how can people get in touch with you? Because
Yeah.
when we speak, we always ask people, would you consider being a partner, an ambassador? And I said, doesn't matter how old you are, doesn't matter what you do, I can get you plugged in. And if it's not with us, I don't care because a win is a win. We're all
There's
on the
strength
same
in
team.
numbers. I think there's an underlying theme with what you're saying. There's strength in numbers, especially when you're combating a problem like this, right?
I can't do it all. Rescue and Hope can't do it all. We have
That's
our
right.
lane and we
Yeah.
stay in our lane.
Yeah.
In fact, because I would speak, people thought I was an expert. I thought it was ridiculous. But when I first wrote the book, they're like, you're
Yeah.
published, you're an expert. I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
expert of dirty laundry. Like, what?
Yeah.
But I would go speak and people would give me money or want to volunteer. And so I would throw that money and volunteers to all the other nonprofits. Now, when
Right.
I started, there were, to be fair, there were probably 5. Now there's probably 45 in our area.
That's a good thing though,
Um,
right? Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely, because
Yeah.
we're all taking a bite out of the elephant instead of thinking that, oh, I can take the whole elephant out.
Yeah.
So I remember when Mark said, Susan, you need to form a nonprofit, you need help. I went to the top 3 people that I sent volunteers and money to because they were doing outstanding work. And I'll never forget Jeff Shaw, who now runs Freedom Collective. I called him and I said, hey, I'm kind of thinking about this. Can you tell me what you think? And he started laughing at me, and I thought, okay, that's not a good
Yeah.
sign. He
Not the
was
start I was
laughing.
hoping for, Jeff.
And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
said, why are you laughing at me? He goes, because we've all been taking side bets behind your back about how long is it going to take for her to see this is what she needs to do.
That's awesome.
And I said, so if I start doing that and taking the volunteers and the money, is that going to be a problem? He goes, Susan, I don't know anybody that shares better than you do. I
Hmm.
know that if someone wants to be on a rescue team and you're not in that lane, you're going to send them to me.
Yeah.
I know if someone wants to go in and do strip club ministry and that's not what you do, you're going to send them to For Sarah. And
Hmm.
he goes, we don't see you as competition. We see you as part of the team. And so they're probably, we've seen turnover of nonprofits coming and going. We've seen
Yes.
different executive directors coming and going.
Yes.
And there are about 4 of us that have been the constant.
Hmm. Hmm.
And they're my go-to people.
Yeah.
And
Your community. You built a
and
community.
we have truly been through thick and thin. We've been through marriages, we've been through deaths, we've been through divorce, we've been through all of these things with different people.
Hmm.
And we're still fighting the same evil, but we're still doing it together. And
I love that.
that old saying that group is much more powerful than any of the parts. The sum of the parts are greater
Yes.
than the parts themselves. And there's no way that this demonstrates itself better than in the anti-human trafficking movement.
Yes.
And so that's where we are.
That's
And
amazing.
honestly, I've built the team the same way. It's like I'll get to know people and I'm like, oh, they would be a really good team member and they could
Yeah.
take this part. Because
Yes.
before, when we started, I was like the cat in the hat. I wore all the hats.
Yep. Yep.
And you can only survive a short time
Yeah.
doing things that are not in your
Well,
wheelhouse.
especially if you want to grow, right?
Yes,
Especially if you want
and
to grow.
so it's been amazing. Like I said, we had a fully volunteer team for the longest time, and then it
Yeah.
was, okay, we need to pay somebody,
Yeah.
and I would tell people, "I can't pay you right now, but I promise I'm gonna work towards it." And I remember when we started paying people full time,
Yeah.
everybody was like, "So you're full time?" I'm like, "No, no, I'm the lowest peg on the totem pole.
Yeah.
I'm last."
Hmm.
And my team saw that I fought for them first. It
Yeah.
was not I'm in charge, so you must listen to me. I mean, I
Right.
scrub toilets, I take out the trash. I've always told people there's no job in here that is too great or too menial for any of us to do. And if you
Agreed.
come in thinking you're the most important peg in the wheel, then you're not going to last long here because we can't deal with someone whose ego is that big.
Yeah.
We need to recognize all of us have a hugely important part of this. And everyone who's left us voluntarily has done so loving what we do, and they still come back and volunteer. There have been a few that we've had to invite to go elsewhere.
Hmm.
And when that has been the case, it has typically been that they are not about the team, they're more
Sure.
about
Yeah.
the individual.
Yeah. It's fascinating because you've built a company, essentially, right? You really have. I mean, you were a startup, and I'm saying that very affectionately, and we're living that day in and day out in real time with our company, and it's a giant people exercise. You
It
know what I
really
mean? It's an
is.
exercise in people, and we've been blessed. You've been blessed. It's palpable because I've worked with your team and gotten to know your team, and they're all amazing. And the culture that you've built and the community, it sounds like, that you've built with other like-minded anti-trafficking organizations is a lovely thing that I think people really need to listen to, regardless if they're in food insecurity or sending kids to camp. You can collaborate with folks and create that community, and synergy dictates 1 + 1 can equal 10 sometimes
And you
properly.
want people to look at the area where you are. Like we're known in Atlanta as having one of the most cohesive movements.
Yeah.
And having our first lady start the Grace Commission did not hurt because we've been able to get some great legislation in
Awesome.
this state. But even that, because I travel around the country and
Hmm.
speak,
Hmm.
um, there are other organizations that will call and say, "Hey, would you have a meeting with our team?" I'm like,
Yes.
"Sure. Why are we meeting?" "Well, we want to know how you handle certain situations," which we do. We are happy to do. Um, you know, I don't charge people if it doesn't cost me anything.
Yeah.
But if I've
Yeah.
got to travel and I've got to stay in a hotel and I've got, got to do some of that, then we do that. Now, obviously, when we do training and other things like that, we've had to monetize it, as otherwise we can't justify our hours in
Well, there's
those
people. Yeah.
areas.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
we do that, and we honestly went out to experts that monetize training and speaking and all, because I was like, I don't know what to charge. And to
Sure.
this
Yeah.
day,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
still don't know what they charge for me to do this, because I
Right.
brought on a new executive director last year, and one of
Awesome.
his jobs was to take all the business off of me and the monetization and all that. So half the times people will say, "Well, what is your fee to come and speak?" And I'm like, "I don't know. Call
Yeah.
Sean."
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Isn't that lovely having someone that you trust that much to quote unquote offload those things so you can go do what you do and we can share this conversation. And I just think
Yeah.
I find that once you get the right people in place, and I mentioned this previously, so you can tell how adamant I am about how amazing our team is and building a great team, whether you're a for-profit company or a nonprofit. I find now I'm so tickled with the potential that people have on our team that I just find myself wanting to just kind of make sure that obviously they have everything they need and
Hmm.
just get out of the way.
Well, I
And
tell them, I always say, and they laugh at me, I'm like, I will not micromanage you because if I have to do that, you're obsolete. And why am I
yeah,
paying you?
I'm the same. I can't do that. You and I have a lot in common, Susan. I
We
use
truly have to trust that they
yeah,
know what they're doing.
yeah,
And if they don't, then bless them to go elsewhere and find
sure,
someone who does. And,
totally.
you know, we do have a wonderful executive director now. We had one prior to him that lasted about 3 months.
Oh
And,
wow. Okay,
you
yeah.
know,
So
this work
yeah,
will get to your true self real quick. It's easy to figure out who fits.
yeah, yeah. No question. No, you know right away, right? I mean,
Mhm.
with people, especially now, it's a very interesting time. It's a lovely time working with people because you can figure it out very, very quickly,
Mhm.
and then you can make a change. You said something, and you said about a movement that you all have created. And I don't, we don't, I'm not purposely going political or anything like
Mhm.
that, or going down that route, right, or that path right now.
Mhm.
Um, just for the listeners, of course, that are hearing this, we're post election. It's
Yes.
2024, and I've noticed that there is a movement. And I want to know if you're not comfortable talking about this, Susan, it's
No,
totally
I
okay
can
too.
talk about anything.
But I've noticed that there is a light being shined on this movement that you call it, right?
Mhm.
Not just in your area, but in other areas. And I feel like the education is becoming more
Mhm.
prevalent. I think that the conversation is becoming more prevalent, and it's very encouraging to see that. Do you feel the same? And I'm a father. I have a sister and a mother, and I care deeply, right, for our community and the children in our community and in our country as well. I feel like there's been a shift.
We say all the time, this is not a Republican issue or a Democrat issue. It's a human race issue
Yes.
because um, males are victims, both children and adult males. Females are victims, both adult and children. Um, Poor socioeconomic families are victimized. Very wealthy socioeconomic families are victimized. There's really not a winner
Yeah.
in this movement. Everyone's a victim somehow, some way.
Yeah.
Even the traffickers, because hurt people hurt people.
Yeah.
The purchasers hurt people. And they can play dumb all they want to, but I've never met anyone that wanted to sign up to have sex with a bunch of strangers on the regular. And so we acknowledge that. We have been very blessed that this issue in the state of Georgia really lit a fire under our First Lady, Marty Kemp. And so
Awesome.
she started the Grace Commission with government organizations and nonprofits and people in for profit companies to come together to look for solutions.
Mhm.
Most of that is from a legislative perspective because
Mhm.
she wanted to hear from all those voices. She's invited survivors as well to speak into that.
Mhm.
We have worked with Republicans and Democrats in the
Mhm.
state of Georgia. And in fact, of the 9 pieces of legislation that we have passed, 8 of them were unanimous.
Mhm.
The other one only had one person vote against it.
Mhm.
So, again, in the state of Georgia, it is not Republican or Democrat. On a national campaign, it is not Republican or Democrat. We have worked with members of Congress to try and get legislation. We've been really pushing for the COSA bill to be signed into law, Kids Online Safety Act. We worked
Mhm.
with the Senate. There was a Senate hearing, and they brought in the top 5 big tech companies that
Mhm.
are causing some harms to victims of that and other issues with the algorithms that they have, which the Kids Online Safety Act would protect against.
Yeah.
And we got an overwhelming support from the Senate. They pushed it over to the House. We've been very fortunate. I've had at least 3 or 4 meetings with the
Mhm.
chairwoman of the Energy and Commerce Committee. who is Kathy McMorris Rogers out of Spokane, Washington.
Oh.
So we've met with her. We've met with other representatives around the country. We've done writing campaigns where we've asked people, it doesn't matter if you're elected officials or Democrat or Republican, because this
Yeah.
issue attacks children, traffickers, pedophiles, people who profit from CSAM and sextortion. They don't ask the person they're getting ready to harm, are you a Republican or a Democrat? Because that's important to me. They don't care.
Yeah.
These people are going to create harm to anyone in the human race that they can get their kicks from and they can profit from.
Yeah.
So, do I believe that it's having momentum? Yes. I've had Democrats reach out to me and say, hey, I want to lend my voice to what you're doing. If you have legislation that you would like crafted, reach out to my office. We're open to doing that. I've had Republicans do the exact same thing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
the first time I met Marty Kemp, I told her two things. And she will testify to this day. She came
Okay.
in and said, and she was meeting everyone in this movement to try and get answers. And I told her, I said, two things you need to know about me. One is I'm not political. I go and do my civic duty and I vote, but past that, I'm not political. Secondly, I have no filter. I will offend you in the first 5 minutes, and I may or may not be a sorry for offending you.
Yeah.
And she looked at me and said, oh my God, here's my sister from another
We're gonna
mister.
get along. We're gonna get along great.
She said, because doing the work is what matters to
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
not which side of the aisle you sit on.
I
So
agree. Yeah.
that's my personal
Yeah.
experience. I know there are people from both Republican and Democratic parties
Yeah.
that like to try and make it a party issue.
Sure.
And I'm like, okay, party issue. I like all the people at the party. So let's invite
Yeah. Yeah,
everybody.
let's all have a good time. Yeah, yeah. No, I can see it, and I feel like because it's the work that you've done,
Mhm.
and the work that you continue to do, I feel like the conversation is strengthening, right? The work is strengthening. I feel like the movement is strengthening, and that's what it's going to require, right? Because
It
this needs
has
to.
to. I mean, when the
Yeah.
Kids Online Safety Act was being debated in Congress, someone said, well, the LGBTQ plus community is not in favor of this. And we're like, really? Why? Because they're very vulnerable to this.
Yes.
And so, NACOSI, the National Coalition on Sexual Exploitation, has been spearheading, unifying all of us going to get COSA
Good.
across the line.
Good.
And so they reached out to the top three LGBTQ plus organizations and said,
Hmm.
this is what we want passed. Here's why we want it passed. What do you think? And there were like a couple of word choices that they wanted
Hmm.
different, meant the same thing, but they felt
Hmm.
safer with it.
Hmm.
And the moment those changes were made, all of those organizations endorsed COSA. So again, it's not a black issue. It's not a white issue. It's
Yeah.
not a sexual orientation issue,
Yeah.
because the purchaser does not care
No, there's
what
no.
your pronouns are. They don't care if you're straight or gay or trans or non-binary. They care what they get to do to you in the time that they've paid for. And that's all
Yep.
they care about.
Yep. Yeah, it's still tough for me to talk about. I don't it hits me. It hits me right in my heart, in
Well,
my
you need
head,
to
and
come to our gala when we celebrate our 10th anniversary, which
I
is
will.
next year.
We are definitely. I think it's time, as a matter
I
of
think
fact.
it's time. We've worked with you guys for a long
I know.
time.
Hey, no one's invited us yet, so thank you so
Okay,
much. No, I'm
here's
joking.
the
I'm joking.
thing.
Yeah,
Everyone is invited. You can't give
I
me that.
know.
We put it out on all our
I'm
socials.
joking. I'm messing with you. It's just because I'm 4,000 miles away or what have you.
There
But
you go.
no, that'd be fantastic.
No,
We'll absolutely come.
please
You're
do. And
you're
I
on.
have to just give y'all a shout out. You're the
Okay.
greatest people to work with. We really spill over the trips and we look at what does our audience like. So, sometimes people are slow out of the gate with bidding. And so some of our board members or my husband and I will throw out the first bid to get things going. And we did an Italy trip that was not something that you did. I planned it a couple years ago. And
Yeah.
so then the passport trip that has the Amalfi Coast trip in it. My husband knows I love Italy. I would go stay there for months if he would let me, and just do the work there. And I did teach a class in Italy. I'll tell you that in a little while. So he said, "Well, I'm a help start this bidding." So he threw his paddle up as the first one to bid on it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then he got caught up
Yeah,
in the excitement. And before long, our auctioneer that we love, Jordan, turns and
Jordan's
points to my
amazing.
husband and goes, "Sold." And he looks at me, he goes, "What did I just do?" I said, "You
Yeah.
just made your wife very happy." So
You
we're
just gave,
going.
sir. You just gave, Mr. Norris.
Yeah. And so we're going on that Amalfi Coast trip, and I cannot wait. We're going to
Oh,
be
it's
booking
awesome.
it soon. And, that passport trip always sells a lot for us. I think the first time we sold it 9 times. And I think the only reason we sold it 5 or 7 this time. And I think the only reason that we, didn't sell it more is because so many of our people that would have bought it the year before.
Sure. Yeah.
But yes, we're getting to the point now because we've had such a relationship with y'all. I told Lisa, I said, we need to call Trevor and tell him how we want a passport package put together for
Let's
us
do
and
it. I
our
think that's
people.
awesome. That's fun for
All of
us.
it. But
Yeah.
our people who do your trips always come back to us and say how amazing it was. One of the couples that bought the trip that was the passport last year chose Bordeaux,
Mm-hmm.
and they went on their 1-year anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they were booking it, they happened to mention it was their 1-year anniversary. So all of these little extra things that weren't in the package, your team put together for them to celebrate their anniversary. And I was like, oh my God, that's why we love HGA so much. That's why we want to do things with them, because y'all are the top shelf of everything you do. There's nothing that you go, man, I wish they would have done this different or
Thank
that
you.
different, or I don't like this. So you're great for our staff to work with.
Yeah.
Our people that go on those trips always call us back if it's a trip we sold through you. And we've used other companies too.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a place we think people want to go and y'all don't have it, but now I'm just going to go. No, if we want them to go, just call Trevor and tell him we need a trip here.
We'd be happy to do it. And, all those words mean so much, Susan. I'm blown away. Thank you. Very kind. We're in the hospitality business.
Mm-hmm.
And, everyone on our team realizes that, and you all are so amazing to work with, like I said. So we learned a lot from y'all, and it's just been a fun ride. And we're just glad we've been able to come along for the ride and add a little bit of value. Y'all hit it out of the park. I am absolutely coming next August. If it's going to be in August again, I'm assuming it will be.
Yes, it's going to be August 2nd.
Oh, wow. Early in the year. Okay. Earlier in the month. Yeah.
We have to, because our venue's going under renovation, and they called us and said, we've got to renovate.
Yeah.
But if you'll do your gala this date this year, then we can move it back to where you like next year, because we're starting with that part first to make sure it's ready for you.
Awesome.
So we've even got the venue working with us to try and maintain. And it's just a great location because it's where several of our major roads in Atlanta converge.
Yeah.
So it's easy for people to get to. It's near the Braves Stadium. Some people, if they're in town, this year they won't be, but last year they were. And we had people that would book at the hotel that connects to the venue, go to the Braves game the night before, and then do this. And so we try and make it like it's just a whole event in and of itself. It's not just a fundraiser, but here's some things you can do in Atlanta to, we want people to have fun with it.
Totally.
We want them to feel like they're coming to an event. We have people in the room last year. We said, raise your hand if you were at the very first gala we did. There are several in there, but we grew by over 100 people this year. And the thing that I love is, for the first time ever, when I walked around the room, because I go to every table and speak to every table during dinner, and then I take my food home because I don't get to eat.
Yeah, you're busy.
And, but as I go to the tables, the exciting thing was 3/4 of the people at this last gala I didn't know.
That's awesome.
And
That's
it
actually a
wasn't
great
that
thing.
people quit coming, but it's that more have come.
Yes.
And we're growing bigger. And
that means it's working. It's working.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
I love it.
It is working. And Lisa and her team, she's got a team of volunteers. We have people that have, for personal reasons, had to step away from Rescuing Hope, either as staff or as volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the greatest gift to us is almost all of them have come back.
Yeah.
After they've gone through whatever they went through, they've come back. If they're staff, they left because of whatever in their family situation
Yeah.
changed, they come back and volunteer, or
Yeah.
they come back and buy a table and bring their friends.
That
And
door is always
that
open.
is the highest compliment to us
I
at
agree.
all, is that everybody wants to come back.
I agree. I think it's awesome. I think it's a great place to leave it. I think it's awesome.
Sounds
I think
good.
that folks are going to get so much out of this, Susan. I can't thank you and your team enough for just the opportunity to even be a part of what you're doing. It means so much to us as a company, to me individually, to my family. And yeah, we just love it.
Well, I'm looking for you in 2025 to come with your family and
No problem.
your
That's
friend
easy. Yeah.
who's experienced this and it's personal. Tell them to come. We'd love to
Okay.
have them too.
Yeah.
We do a lot, even when we have survivors that will tell us in conversation. We don't know
Yeah.
when they're buying their tickets,
Yeah.
but they may be a survivor that we've never worked with, but they've
Yeah.
heard about our organization, and so they want to come in and support.
I love that.
And we always try and make sure that we treat them as royalty, because they truly are the heroes of their
Mm-hmm.
own story.
Mm-hmm.
We are just the supporting actors that come alongside them. We don't try and make this, I don't want it to be about me. I don't want it to be about any team member. We do what we do to serve the survivors. Even when we look at our first responder training that we
Yeah.
bring in,
Yeah.
and we have to put funding towards that. But the only reason we do that is for the victims that are out there that need to become survivors, so that we can help them get out of that situation if they can't get out on their own. We don't use the term rescue. And someone asked me one time, well, why are you rescuing Hope? You know,
Yeah.
because the girl's name was Hope.
Yeah.
And I did that on purpose to make it a double meaning. What
I
we
love
do
it.
rescue is hope.
Yes.
Hope for the victims and survivors that there's a better life for them.
Yes.
Hope for the first responders that there's something that they can do with the right tools, and hope for our team that we're making an impact. So it is the non-tangible hope, not an individual. And we don't rescue. We come along and support those who we say they get out of the life. Sometimes they do it with law enforcement or medical personnel or teachers. Sometimes they do it on their own.
Yeah.
But they find us because they don't know how to move forward, and that's where we step in and help. So you guys are part of our team, and
I
we could
appreciate
not
that.
be prouder.
That means everything to us, and we want to continue to do that, and twist the dial on it however we can. And yeah, we're always here for you. And I know you know that. And so can't thank you enough. Appreciate it, Susan.
Thank you.
Susan's super easy to find on LinkedIn. If you want to learn more about Rescuing Hope, go to rescuinghope.com. And thanks so much. It's long overdue. I'm so glad we got to spend some time together. Thanks, Susan.
That was great, Trevor. Thank you. And thanks for all you do to support Lisa and the team when things are getting crazy. You always come in at crunch time, and you guys, when we're so busy with everything at the end and we're a little late on paying when we have to, y'all have been so gracious to us, and hopefully y'all know you can always count on us.
100% we do. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Thank
Thanks
you
so much, Susan. Hey, thanks so much for watching today's video. If you don't mind, if we got any value out of it, please leave a comment or a question below. And if you're in a binging mood, we've got an HCA playlist of all of our podcasts and webinars that you can watch at any time. If you have a specific question about a certain fundraising topic, we're HCA. We've probably covered it. So take a look at the playlist, and we'll see you all next time.